So the mood of worship is very important. This means that the devotee who is doing the worship is integral to that process. In other words, we do have the scriptural background, and we have the deity, and we have all the rules and regulations. And it's up to the devotee who is worshiping the deity according to those rules to actually make those rules functional. So what does that mean? That means that the whole process of rules and regulations of deity worship, which we call the vidhi of Pancharatra, is meant for simply refining and regulating your devotion. In other words, the basis of bhakti is devotion. As we know from the Nectar of Devotion, the basic definition of bhakti is to cultivate a relationship with the Supreme Lord favorably. And that comes from faith. Faith means that the jiva has an implicit confidence and conviction in the existence of the Lord and the necessity of worshiping Him. So that has to come from the soul itself, from the jiva, not from the mind or anything else. So once that faith is established in the jiva, based on that, then we do bhakti, which means different activities, such as chanting the name of the Lord, hearing the topics of the Lord from Bhagavatam, worshipping the deity according to Pancharatra scriptures. So these are the activities we do, but it is based upon the faith and conviction of the devotee. So this will determine the result we get from bhakti. In other words, we have no faith and no bhakti and worship the Lord. It's actually not deity worship. The Lord does not accept that. So the devotee has to understand that the important aspect is his bhakti or his devotion. However, there's a little bit of a condition or restriction we have to make on that, because we're advised in the beginning to follow rules and regulations. We have two processes of bhakti, Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. Both are sadhana bhakti, both are practices. But unless one actually has a genuine enthusiasm and eagerness to follow after that spontaneous love of the people of Vrindavan, then he's advised to do Vaidhi Bhakti. So the Pancharatric process of deity worship, or Archana, actually is part of Vaidhi Bhakti. If we go to Raganuga Bhakti and do deity worship, of course some of the rules will be there, but the prominence there is not the rules and regulations, but the feeling of the devotee, or the mood of the devotee. That becomes more prominent. But as I said in the beginning, we have to regulate ourselves because we realize that we are fallen souls in this material world and we can't control our senses. So we have to begin by regulating our senses, and the regulation is performed through following these rules of deity worship, which means we follow the Pancharatric process and therefore Vaidhi Bhakti. So it's not that it's completely Vaidhi, because as I said, the element of the devotee's devotion is of most importance. So it's a combination of the devotion and faith of the individual plus this application of those rules of Vaidhi Bhakti and Pancharatric Vidhi, which make the worship successful. So we cannot say it is either one or the other. It is not all bhava and just feeling. If we do that, then we may end up concocting a lot of things. And on the other hand, it's not just vidhi, because vidhi itself is nothing. We also have to have that basis of faith and devotion to the Supreme Lord. So it's a combination of both things. In the different sampradayas, of course, there's a little bit of a different emphasis. In the Sri Sampradaya or the Madhva Sampradaya, the Vaidhi aspect becomes quite prominent. In the Vallabha Sampradaya and the Gaudiya Sampradaya, we find the feeling aspect, the bhava aspect, becomes more prominent. And in Raganuga Bhakti within the Gaudiya Sampradaya, then we find that bhava mood becomes more prominent still. But as for a society like ISKCON, which is trying to establish general principles for devotees beginning the process and from all sorts of backgrounds, it is always advised that we start with this process of Vaidhi Bhakti Pancharatric Vidi, but at the same time, remember that we do have the element of the personal devotion of the individual. That should not be forgotten or in any way minimized. And at the same time, we can't forget the rules and regulations.